The Count tore his pregnant ex-wife's dress on the wedding day, but what she did next. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The carriage wheels crunched over the gravel, and Marjorie felt each turn of the wheels as if it ground against her ribs. Ashford Hall rose ahead, familiar stone and tall windows, banners fluttering for a celebration that had nothing to do with her anymore. The footman opened the door with a practiced bow. "Lady Hargrave," he began, then faltered. Marjorie stepped down without his hand. "Miss Collins will do now," she said quietly. He lowered his eyes. "Yes, miss." Voices floated from the open doors of the great house. Laughter, a violin somewhere inside, the murmur of well-dressed people who had arrived early to witness a second wedding for the Earl of Ashford. Marjorie smoothed the front of her gown. The seamstress had fashioned it carefully, with a higher waist and discreet folds, meant to conceal what could no longer be entirely hidden. At 4 months, the child made its presence known in the way her bodice sat, in the way her breath came a little shorter on the stairs. She climbed those stairs now, one hand on the carved rail. 2 maids in aprons stopped whispering when they saw her. One dipped a curtsy. "Miss Collins," she said too loudly, "we did not know you would come." "Neither did I," Marjorie answered, "until this morning. Until Edmund's neat handwriting had arrived on good paper. You are invited, as a gesture of goodwill, to my wedding to Lady Beatrice Everley. The past is quite behind us. I trust you will take this chance to show your own magnanimity and calm the gossip." Magnanimity, calm the gossip, as if he ever meant to calm anything. She crossed the threshold and stepped into air thick with perfume and polished wood. The butler announced her name, hesitated, and then said it again, perhaps to be sure he had not said the wrong one. "Miss Marjorie Collins." Conversations dimmed, faces turned. There she was, the former countess, returned like a ghost to the scene of her old life, dressed well enough but not adorned like the ladies married to an ancient title. One woman, jeweled from her ears to her wrists, leaned towards her friend. "They say she left him without a word," the jeweled woman murmured. "They say," the other replied, "that no gentleman sends away a wife for nothing. Do not look so openly." A young gentleman, perhaps barely out of school, stared at Marjorie with a mixture of curiosity and pity. "That is his first wife? She does not look mad." "Hush," his father said. "We do not know the whole of it." Marjorie moved through the room with the steady step of someone who had walked there countless times and knew every rug's edge. Her heart beat hard, but her chin was level. She greeted people who bowed, nodded to those who looked away. A sister of a neighbouring baronet gave her a brief, tight smile. "Miss Collins," she said, choosing the safer name, "I did not expect to see you here." "Nor I," Marjorie replied, "but the invitation was quite clear." "Yes, quite. How brave you are to come." "I am only here to wish them well," Marjorie said. The lie tasted like dust, but she let it stand. She had come for one reason, to look Edmund in the eye once more, to see how easily he wore his second bride, his second future, as if the first had been a coat he had outgrown. The great doors to the ballroom were open. Inside, the bride and groom stood at the head of the receiving line like actors on a stage. Lady Beatrice Everley wore white silk that fell in simple lines, a wreath of spring flowers in her dark hair. She was younger than Marjorie by several years, with bright eyes and a nervous smile that fluttered on and off like a candle in a draught. Edmund Hargrave, Earl of Ashford, stood beside her, tall and composed, his dark coat cut to perfection, his cravat impossibly neat. He looked, Marjorie thought, exactly as he had on the day she married him, upright, proud, entirely certain of himself, but he did not look like a stranger. That was the worst of it. "Who is that?" Beatrice whispered, her lips barely moving. Edmund's eyes had already found Marjorie. He watched her approach with an expression that never wavered. "That," he said, "is my former wife." Beatrice's fingers tightened on his sleeve. "She came." "Of course she came," Edmund replied softly. Marjorie has always known her part. She would not disappoint an audience. Marjorie stepped into the line, waiting behind 2 elderly cousins of Edmund's, who took an age to express their joy. She kept her hands clasped before her, resisting the urge to touch her abdomen. She would not display it, not by choice, not in front of them. The cousins drifted away at last, and Marjorie stood before the pair who had taken her place. She inclined her head first to Beatrice, "Lady Beatrice," she said, "allow me to wish you happiness." Beatrice swallowed. "Thank you. That is very kind." Her voice trembled on the last word. She looked quickly to Edmund, seeking his approval. He gave it with a small, satisfied smile. "Marjorie," he said, using her name with easy familiarity, "it was generous of you to come. I confess I did not expect you to accept. Your letter sounded," she paused, "eager for my presence." "Eager?" He tilted his head in mock surprise. "Surely not. Merely hopeful that those who delight in gossip might see there is no ill will between us. We parted with such mutual understanding." Several people within earshot shifted slightly. The words mutual understanding hung in the air like smoke. Marjorie met his gaze. "Is that how you tell it now, Edmund?" "Is there another way?" he asked pleasantly. "I recall that you left my house of your own accord. No one compelled you." A faint color rose in her cheeks. "As there was nothing left there for me, it seemed the wisest course." He leaned nearer by a fraction, his voice dropping so only those closest could hear. "Nothing left. You had everything, Marjorie. A title, a house, a husband of old family. Many women would have cherished such gifts." "Some gifts," she answered quietly, "are given with strings that tighten day by day." "Ah," Edmund said, "you speak in riddles. That was always your way. You should be careful. People may misunderstand you. They may think your mind unsettled." Beatrice glanced uneasily between them. "Edmund, perhaps—" He lifted a hand to pat her fingers reassuringly. "Do not distress yourself, my dear. Marjorie and I know each other well. Do we not, Marjorie?" "We do," Marjorie said. "Perhaps more than we would wish." His eyes flicked down, quick as a knife, over the line of her gown, the slightly raised waist, the careful folds. He smiled without warmth. "You look remarkably well," he said. "I had heard you had not been entirely yourself of late." "I am quite myself," she replied. "More so than I have been in years." He chuckled softly. "How fortunate. Then you will not mind demonstrating to our guests that there is nothing to be whispered about. We would not wish them to imagine there are unfinished matters between us." "Unfinished matters have a way of coming back on their own," Marjorie said, "with or without witnesses." Someone behind her coughed, embarrassed. A dowager aunt fanned herself as if the room had grown warm. Beatrice's fingers dug deeper into Edmund's sleeve. "Edmund," Beatrice murmured again, "this is hardly the moment." He smiled at her, then looked back at Marjorie with a gleam in his eye that she recognized too well. That gleam had often preceded a cutting remark behind closed doors. Now he chose to display it in public. "On the contrary," he said, "this is the perfect moment." He took a step closer, lowering his voice even more, forcing her to lean in to hear him. "Do you know what they say about you?" he asked. "They say you left because you could not fulfill your duty, that you could not give me an heir, that it distressed you so greatly your mind wandered. They are very sympathetic." She stiffened. "I am not concerned with what they say. You should be. Reputation is all we have in this world, Marjorie. A woman without a husband and without children is fragile. A woman rumored to be unwell in her thoughts." He lifted his hand, palm up, as if weighing something light that might blow away. "She is nothing at all. You invited me here to remind me of that?" she asked. "No," he said, and his smile sharpened. "I invited you to show that you bear no grudge, that you are content, that you have accepted your situation with grace. It is important that they see you accept it." "And if I do not?" she said. His gaze flickered again, downwards. "You will." He reached as if to adjust a ribbon on the front of her gown, a harmless, almost brotherly gesture to any watching eye. She stepped back, but there was another guest behind her, and nowhere to go. His fingers brushed the seam at her side, just where the fabric had been altered to allow her growing form more room. "Hold still," he said lightly. "You are always so restless. Do not touch." The sound was small, but unmistakable, a sharp, traitorous rip. Stitching gave way. The carefully disguised line of her abdomen, once softened by the folds of fabric, became clearer as the seam parted. The tear was not large, she was not exposed indecently, but the shape beneath the gown could no longer be mistaken for anything other than what it was. Gasps rose in a circle around them. "Good heavens," someone whispered. "Is she must be. How far along do you think?" Beatrice's hand flew to her mouth, her cheeks drained of color. "Edmund," she breathed. "She is." Marjorie stood very still. She heard the comments as if through a wall. "Disgraceful," a woman murmured near the back, "to appear at his wedding in such a state." "But whose is it?" another replied softly. "If it were Edmund's, would he not have—" "Hush, think what you are implying." Edmund's hand hung in the air, the picture of concern. "Oh," he said with exaggerated dismay. "Forgive me, I did not mean— These seams are so delicate. My dear Marjorie, I hope I have not caused you distress." "You have not touched me for months," she answered, her voice steady. "I assure you this is nothing." A shocked silence followed that statement. Eyes grew wider. Someone let out a tiny laugh, quickly smothered. Edmund chuckled as if she had made a charming jest. "You see," he said to the nearest guests, "her wit is as sharp as ever. Pay no attention. She likes to provoke." Beatrice whispered, "Edmund, everyone is staring. Let them," he replied under his breath. "They will talk regardless. Now they will talk with certainty." He looked at Marjorie again, something triumphant glinting behind his courtesy. "A child," he said softly. "Only for her. And so soon after you left my house. People will draw their own conclusions. I trust you are prepared to answer questions." She wanted to strike him then, not with fists, but with words she had held back for months. Yet she felt the eyes upon her, felt the fragile life within her shift in response to her rising anger. Instead of lashing out, she did the worst thing she could do to a man like Edmund. She did nothing. She straightened, took her hands away from the torn seam, and let the guests see exactly what they wished to see. She let them drink in the sight of a former countess with a rounded abdomen at her former husband's wedding. "Marjorie," a gentleman she had once danced with years ago, said, "Perhaps you should sit down." "I'm quite well," she replied. "Such accidents are easily mended." "Allow me to find a maid," Edmund offered. "We cannot have you uncomfortable at such a joyous event." She looked at him, and for a moment everything else faded. The music, the whispers, the flowers, Beatrice's pale face. There was only Edmund, the man who had sworn to honor and protect her, and who now used the same smile to strip her bare of whatever dignity she had left. "You may save your efforts," she said softly. "We both know your concern is not for my comfort." His jaw tightened the slightest bit. "Do not make a scene," he murmured. "You already have," she answered. He stepped aside to allow the next pair of guests to offer their compliments, as if their exchange had been nothing more than an awkward moment between old friends. Beatrice stared at Marjorie with a mixture of confusion and fear. "I did not know," Beatrice whispered. "No one told me you—" "No one tells you many things, I suspect," Marjorie said. "You are very young, Lady Beatrice. I hope you learn quickly." Beatrice's mother appeared at her daughter's elbow, her fan fluttering fast. "Come, Beatrice, you are flushed. We must see to your comfort." Her eyes flicked over Marjorie, cold and assessing. "Miss Collins," she said, "how unfortunate. Perhaps you did not realize how noticeable such a condition would be in a crowded room." "I realize many things today," Marjorie replied, "some more clearly than ever." She turned away then, not waiting for anyone to dismiss her. People parted in front of her. No one reached out to steady her. She walked through the ballroom as if passing through smoke, each step light, measured, impossible. The torn seam tugged with each motion, reminding her with every breath that the secret she had carried close to her body was no longer hers alone. She reached the side door to the terrace. Cool air rushed over her face like water. She stepped outside and gripped the stone balustrade. "Marjorie!" The voice came from the shadows near the door. She turned quickly. "Dr. Whitmore," she said. Thomas stepped into the light. His hair was a little damp at the temples, as if he had come in haste. He wore a dark coat with modest brass buttons, nothing like the satin and embroidery inside, yet he seemed more solid than anyone in the ballroom. "I saw you arrive," he said. "I was not sure if I should approach." "You should not have come at all," she said, trying for a steady tone. "This is hardly an event for a village doctor." "I was asked to attend in case of fainting ladies," he replied. "Your former mother-in-law has faith in my ability to restore delicate nerves." Marjorie let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "I imagine she does." He looked at her gown, at the uneven line where the seam had given way. His eyes softened, but he did not let pity show. That was one of the things she had always liked about him. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "A careless hand," she said. A delicate seam. Nothing of consequence. It does not look like nothing, he answered. You are pale. Sit down. I will not faint in his garden, she said. He has had enough entertainment at my expense. I am not concerned with him, Thomas said. I am concerned with you and the child you carry. Come, sit, or I shall lift you into the chair myself. She gave him a sharp look. You would not dare. He matched her gaze evenly. You know very well that I would not. But you also know that I cannot watch you sway like that without doing something. She realized then that her knees did feel unsteady, and the world had a faint shimmer around its edges. She let him guide her to a stone bench beneath a bare-limbed tree. The spring had not fully dressed the branches, but tiny buds were beginning to show. There, Thomas said. Breathe slowly. Close your eyes if you must. She did not close her eyes. Closing them made the memories sharper. The day she left this house. The night she discovered the truth in a rolled paper tied with fraying ribbon. The look on Edmund's face when she refused to sign. Everyone saw, she said. He made sure of it. I saw enough from the doorway, Thomas replied. Did he do it on purpose? He knew exactly where the seam had been let out, she answered. He has always known where to press. Thomas set his jaw. There is no blood, he said, his gaze moving to the torn fabric and back to her face. That is something. Yes, she agreed. We must be grateful for the smallest mercies. Marjorie, he said softly, you cannot stay here. I have no intention of staying, she replied. I came only to see how far he would go. Now I know. You cannot go back into that ballroom, he said. You cannot walk through those people again. No, she said. I will not give them another moment of my time. Then come away with me, he urged. My carriage is at the side gate. It is a short drive to my house. You need rest. You need to be somewhere that is not filled with people who relish your discomfort. Her fingers tightened in her lap. If I leave now, they will say I fled in shame. Let them say what they like, Thomas answered. You once told me that truth matters more than talk. Hold to that now. There is more at stake than their whispers. You are carrying a child. Do not let Edmund's cruelty endanger it. She flinched at the word cruelty, though it was spoken without heat. He did not strike me, she said. He only had revealed what I had tried to hide. He did not need his hand to strike you, Thomas replied. He knows the power of a gesture in a room like that. Marjorie, please. I have never asked you for anything of consequence before. Let me take you away from here. Give yourself and the child a chance to be safe. She looked back at the tall windows glowing with candlelight. Figures moved inside, shadows against the glass. The sound of music drifted faintly out, cheerful and remote. He thinks he has won, she said quietly. He thinks he has written the last scene. Then do not stay to applaud, Thomas said. Walk out before the curtain falls. She turned her gaze to him. You have grown very bold, Dr. Whitmore. I am a doctor, he replied. It is my duty to be bold when my patients endanger themselves. I did not realize I was your patient, she said. He hesitated, then said, You have been for some time. You simply never signed the book. That drew a real smile from her, small and tired. Very well, she said. Take me away before I change my mind and march back in there to tell them all exactly what kind of man they applaud. There will be time for that, he answered. For now, let us see you safely home. He offered his arm. She took it, rising carefully. Together they crossed the terrace and slipped down the side stairs, away from the main entrance. A stable boy nodded at Thomas, already told to keep a carriage ready. Within minutes, Marjorie was seated inside, the door closed against the distant music. Thomas climbed in opposite her. If you feel faint, tell me at once, he said. If you feel any pain, Thomas, she interrupted gently. If I feel anything remarkable, you will be the first to know. He pressed his lips together, then gave a short nod. The carriage jolted into motion. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The rhythm of the wheels filled the space between them. Marjorie looked down at the torn seam, at the curve of her abdomen now so plainly outlined. I suppose there is no hiding now, she said. From whom? Thomas asked. The village will know in a matter of days, regardless. From him, she replied, from Edmund. He knows now that I carry a child. He will not like that. He already does not like many things, Thomas said. One more will not change the world. It may, she said. He cares for his name more than anything, more than truth, more than honor, more than... She trailed off. More than you? Thomas finished quietly. She met his eyes, then looked away. I left because I could not bear what he asked of me. I thought that would be the end of it. I did not expect— You did not expect to carry his child after you left, Thomas said. She gave a short, breathless laugh. I did not expect a great many things. Yet here we are, he repeated. The carriage turned onto the lane that led away from Ashford Hall. The lights of the great house receded, one by one, swallowed by the dark. Thomas, she said suddenly. Yes? If Edmund believes the child is his, he may try to use that, to claim something. To tie me to him again. Can he? Thomas asked. Legally, you are no longer his wife. He chose that. He cannot have the freedom and the claim both. He can attempt anything that suits him, she replied, especially if he fears what I know. Thomas leaned forward slightly. What you know? She hesitated, her hand drifting to her side, as if one secret rested in her body and another in her mind. He thinks I left because of his temper, she said at last. Because of harsh words, cold rooms, closed doors. He believes I could not bear being a countess in name only. That I wanted affection he would not give. And that is not why you left? Thomas asked. It is not the whole of it, she answered. I left because I saw something I should not have seen. Because the name Hargrave is not what they all think it is. Because the title he clings to so fiercely may not be his to hold. Thomas's eyes widened. Marjorie, what are you saying? She looked out the small carriage window. In the distance, Ashford Hall was no more than a faint glow against the horizon. I am saying, she murmured, that Edmund's greatest fear has never been me, nor the child he tried to shame me with. His greatest fear is the secret I carry that has nothing to do with this baby at all. Thomas did not speak at once. The carriage rattled on, the lantern swinging gently, throwing lines of light and shadow across his face. You should start at the beginning, he said at last, as plainly as you can. The beginning, Marjorie repeated. That would take us back years. We have only a short drive. Then give me enough so that when you say things like, the title may not be his, I do not feel as if the ground has shifted, he replied. You forget I am merely a village doctor, not a lawyer. She gave a faint smile. You are more than that. Tonight, he said, I must be enough to keep you steady. So tell me what you can bear, she sighed, looking down at her hands. You remember when the old Earl fell ill, she said. Everyone knew. People spoke of it in the village. You attended him, as often as they would allow a man of my standing into a house like that, Thomas said. Lord Edmund preferred a physician from London, a name with more Latin attached to it. You were there often enough, she went on. You saw him in his last months. You heard him speak in ways that troubled you. Thomas's brow furrowed. He said many things near the end. Some were clear, some were only fragments. I recall him asking once if I believed men could undo the past. I took it as a general reflection. He was not speaking in general, Marjorie said. He was speaking of a decision he made years before Edmund was born. Marjorie, Thomas said slowly, are you certain? She nodded once. I am, because he told me so himself. Not directly as one might in a courtroom, but in enough pieces that I could not ignore them. When did he tell you? Thomas asked. The night before he died, she said. You had left. The grand London physician had gone upstairs to rest. Edmund was in the study sorting papers, preparing to step into his father's place. They thought the old man was sleeping. I sat with him. Thomas watched her closely. Go on. He woke and called me by my maiden name, she said. Miss Collins, he said. As if I were a girl again standing in the vicar's garden. He spoke of promises, of fear, of a child sent away. He said the house rested on a lie. I wanted to think it was only confusion, but she shook her head. There were documents, Thomas. Old letters, a certificate. I found them later when I was asked to sign something that did not match what he had said. Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it again. You did not sign, he said. No, she replied. I did not sign. Edmund was not pleased. That night is past, Thomas said. We will come back to it. For now you must rest. I shall not have you relive it all at once. She looked at him with gratitude and relief. You sound as if you are prescribing a tonic. In a way I am, he answered. We shall discuss this secret in doses. Too much at once may cause weakness. She let the subject fall. The carriage rolled into the village, past shuttered shops and the glow of a few windows. Thomas's house stood between his small surgery and a narrow lane, brick and plain, with only a rose bush by the door to soften it. He helped her down carefully. "Welcome," he said. "Such as it is." "It is quiet," she murmured. "That is more than I can say for Ashford Hall." He led her inside. The hallway smelled faintly of soap and herbs. A single lamp burned on a small table. A middle-aged woman in a plain dress appeared from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron. "Doctor," she said, "I heard the wheels. Is someone—" "Oh, Miss Collins." "This is Mrs. Hargreaves," Thomas said. "She keeps my house in tolerable order and reminds me to eat." Mrs. Hargreaves dipped a quick curtsy. "Miss Collins, we have met at the church." "Yes," Marjorie said. "You used to sit in the third pew from the front." "That I did," Mrs. Hargreaves replied. Her gaze slid to the torn seam, down to Marjorie's rounded figure, then back up. "You have had some trouble with your gown." Marjorie's cheeks warmed. "It seems so." "Nothing that cannot be mended," Mrs. Hargreaves said briskly. "Come, we will find you a room and a needle. Doctor, fetch one of your blankets. The good wool, not the scratchy one." Thomas raised his hands in a mock show of obedience. "As you command." Mrs. Hargreaves guided Marjorie down a short passage to a small chamber at the back of the house. A narrow bed stood against the wall, a chest at its foot, a single chair by the window. "It was used for patients who needed a quiet place," Thomas said, bringing in the blanket. "If you do not object, it now belongs to you, for as long as you need it." "It is more than I deserve," Marjorie said softly. "Nonsense, Mrs." Hargreaves said. "Everyone deserves a clean bed and a door that closes. Sit, miss, let me see that seam." Marjorie sat carefully on the edge of the bed. Mrs. Hargreaves examined the tear with practiced fingers. "Whoever let this out did it well," she said. "But these fashionable fabrics are flimsy things. They are made to be admired, not to last." "I chose it to conceal," Marjorie said. "It has done the opposite." Mrs. Hargreaves gave a small snort. "Babies will show themselves when they are ready, no matter what cloth you drape over them. Doctor, bring me my sewing basket. It is in the kitchen, beside your precious jar of dried mint." Thomas chuckled and went. As Mrs. Hargreaves set to work, her hands moved quickly, almost gently. "You have come from the hall?" she asked. "Yes," Marjorie replied. "The village will know all about it by morning," Mrs. Hargreaves said. "They know everything, but they rarely know it correctly." "Then they will fit well with Edmund," Marjorie said dryly. Mrs. Hargreaves glanced up, surprised, then smiled faintly. "You still have your tongue. That is good. Some women lose theirs along the way. One sharp remark at a time." "I lost many things there," Marjorie said. "I have reclaimed at least my temper." Thomas returned with the basket and set it down. "Mrs. Hargreaves," he said, "do not keep her up too long. She needs rest." "Men," Mrs. Hargreaves muttered, "always thinking rest cures everything. A bit of proper talk can do just as much good." She tied off the last stitch. "There, it will hold well enough for now. Tomorrow we shall see about proper clothes, something made for the purpose." "Thank you," Marjorie said. "You are welcome," Mrs. Hargreaves replied. "Now lie down for a while. Doctor, she will need food once she wakes. Something simple." "I shall find bread and soup," he said. "There is always bread and soup," Mrs. Hargreaves said. "Go on then." Marjorie lay back. Her body, held stiff for hours, sank gratefully into the thin mattress. She heard their voices fade into the next room. The house's quiet wrapped around her. For the first time in months, she slept without the echo of Edmund's steps in the corridor. When she woke, the light through the small window told her it was near morning. The house murmured with soft sounds. A kettle, footsteps, the creak of a chair. She sat up slowly. The seam held. The child shifted, a faint flutter. Mrs. Hargreaves appeared with a tray. "Good, you are awake, eat." "Is he always so obedient?" Marjorie asked, glancing toward the door. "Who, the doctor?" Mrs. Hargreaves sniffed. "He thinks he commands this place. I let him keep the illusion." There was bread, a little cheese, and a bowl of thin soup. Marjorie ate more than she expected to. "Thank you," she said. "You may thank me by staying quiet today," Mrs. Hargreaves replied. "Tomorrow the village will be buzzing like a hive. Best to have strength when the bees come out." "The village," Marjorie murmured. Yes, she did not have to wait until tomorrow. By afternoon, the first sting came. Thomas suggested a short walk to stretch her legs. "Fresh air will do you good," he said. "We will stay close to the house." Mrs. Hargreaves nodded. "Go, but if she tires, bring her back at once." They stepped into the street. People were about, as always, a butcher sweeping his doorstep, children skipping along the lane, a woman hanging linens that snapped in the breeze. Heads turned to watch them. "Do not mind them," Thomas said quietly. "They look at anything new. If a cat sat on my roof, they would stare as much." "A countess in a village doctor's house is hardly a cat on a roof," Marjorie replied. "I think we both know that." "You are not a countess now," he reminded her gently. "No," she said. "I am something much more troubling, a fallen countess carrying a child." A woman they both knew approached, Mrs. Fletcher, the baker's wife. She smiled at Thomas, then hesitated at the sight of Marjorie. "Doctor," she said, "out with your guest?" "Yes," Thomas replied. "Fresh air is recommended." Mrs. Fletcher's eyes moved to Marjorie's middle, then darted away. "We heard there was an incident at the hall," she said. "The hall is fond of incidents," Marjorie said. "It has never lacked for them." Mrs. Fletcher flushed. "I did not mean to pry, only people talk, they say, well, they say many things." "They always do," Thomas said. "Good day, Mrs. Fletcher." She bobbed a curtsy and hurried on. They went a little farther past the churchyard. The vicar's wife, Mrs. Latham, was coming out of the gate. She gave Thomas a cordial nod, then fixed Marjorie with a look that tried to be kind. "Miss Collins," she said, "I was saddened to hear of your change in circumstance." "Were you?" Marjorie asked. "That is more than most." Mrs. Latham pressed her lips together. "It is always a pity when a marriage fails. But perhaps you will find peace in a simpler life. Humility is pleasing in the sight of heaven." "I have had no shortage of opportunities to practice it," Marjorie said. "Indeed," Mrs. Latham replied. "And now, of course, there is the matter of— we must pray that your situation is resolved with as little scandal as possible." "Scandal tends to follow certain addresses," Marjorie said. "If you wish to avoid it, you should counsel young ladies not to marry into certain houses." Mrs. Latham blinked. "I assure you, Miss Collins, I counsel young ladies to obey their parents and trust in Providence." "Providence has been given many tasks," Marjorie murmured. Thomas stepped in. "Mrs. Latham, if you would like to discuss any parish concerns, call at the surgery this week. For now I must insist Miss Collins not be overtaxed." Mrs. Latham inclined her head. "Of course. Good day." They walked on. "You are provoking them," Thomas said softly. "I am answering them," she replied. "It is not the same thing." "At the moment," he said, "they do not know what to make of you. Some may even pity you." "I am not sure I prefer pity to condemnation," she said. "At least condemnation admits I have some power." "You have more power than you think," he answered. They turned back toward the house as the wind picked up. When they reached the door, a carriage stood in front, small but elegant. A crest shone on its panel. Thomas frowned. "We have a visitor." A woman stepped out, her bonnet trimmed with pale ribbons, her gown a little finer than most in the village. Marjorie recognized her at once. "Lady Everley," she said. Beatrice's mother looked her up and down slowly. "Miss Collins," Lady Everley said, "what an unexpected place to find you." "I could say the same," Marjorie replied. "I did not know you were acquainted with the delights of Ashford's lower street." "I go where I must for my daughter's peace," Lady Everley said. "Dr. Whitmore, a word." Thomas bowed slightly. "Of course, Lady Everley." "In private," she added. "If it concerns Miss Collins, it concerns me," he said. Lady Everley's eyes narrowed. "Very well. I shall speak plainly. My daughter was distressed last night. Many people were. You made quite an impression, Miss Collins." "I was not the one who tore my gown," Marjorie said. "No," Lady Everley replied. "But you chose to attend in your condition. That, I must say, was unwise." "I was invited," Marjorie said. "Your future son-in-law thought it wise." Lady Everley's lips tightened. "Edmund believes in facing unpleasantness. I am of a more cautious nature. I prefer to avoid it. That is why I am here." "I do not wish to be unpleasant to you," Marjorie said. "I wish you better fortune than I had in that house." Lady Everley ignored that. "It is not suitable," she said, "for you to remain so near Ashford Hall. Your presence will keep tongues wagging." Beatrice's name is on everyone's lips as it is. Your continued stay will only encourage more talk. I dare say you do not wish to inflict that upon another woman." "I inflict nothing," Marjorie said. "People choose their own words." "You know what I mean," Lady Everly went on. "This is a small place, you living under the roof of a gentleman without ties to you, in your state." "Lady Everly," Thomas said, his voice cool, "you imply more than you ought." "I imply what others will think," she replied. "Appearances matter. For Beatrice, for you, for the child. It would be better for all if you were to remove to some quieter town, somewhere your past is not known." "And how would I live in this quiet town?" Marjorie asked. "On what means?" Lady Everly shrugged slightly. "Edmund is not ungenerous. He has fulfilled his obligations. He could perhaps be persuaded to extend them, if it ensured you were cooperative." "Cooperative," Marjorie repeated. "Meaning silent, meaning discreet," Lady Everly said. "He is to be my son. I will not pretend I do not care what is said of him, nor what is said of my daughter, nor what is said of you, for that matter. Think of your reputation." "My reputation," Marjorie said. "That fragile thing everyone but myself is carrying around and poking with sticks." Lady Everly's eyes flashed. "Do not be flippant. You have already suffered enough. Why invite more?" "I did not invite Edmund's gesture last night," Marjorie said. "I did not invite his letter casting me off. I did not invite half of what has been laid at my door. I begin to think, Lady Everly, that the only thing I invited was my own refusal to be quiet." Lady Everly turned to Thomas. "Doctor, surely you see that this arrangement is improper. You must advise her. It is not your place to harbour her." "It is precisely my place to care for those in need," Thomas replied. "Miss Collins is under my roof, and will remain so as long as she wishes. If anyone's mind is disturbed by that, I suggest they examine their own motives." "You risk your practice," Lady Everly said. "Your good name." "My name is mine," he said. "Not Edmund Hargrave's, not the village's, mine. And I will not hang it on anyone else's hook." Lady Everly drew herself up. "You are bold, sir. Perhaps too bold for your station." "Perhaps," Thomas said calmly. "But I sleep well." She faced Marjorie again. "My daughter is gentle," she said. "She has not your strength of spirit. She cannot bear the strain of continued scandal. I ask you, woman to woman, do not make her life harder than it must be." Marjorie hesitated. For a moment, she saw Beatrice's pale face the night before, the uncertainty in her eyes. "I do not wish harm to her," Marjorie said. "Whatever you may think, she is innocent in this." "Then help her," Lady Everly urged. "Go away. Let her settle into her marriage without you standing in the shadows of every conversation." "If I go," Marjorie said slowly, "it will not be for her. It will be because I choose it for myself, not because Edmund and his allies arrange me like a piece of furniture." Lady Everly's mouth thinned. "You will find the world has little patience for women who insist on choosing." "I have already learned that," Marjorie said. "And yet, here I am." Lady Everly's gaze dropped once more to her figure. "You are owed pity for your blindness, if nothing else," Lady Everly said quietly. "Edmund will not change. Protect yourself if you can. I have done my duty in warning you." She turned to go, then paused. "Edmund intends to write to you," she said. "He believes words on paper may succeed where polite invitations failed. I suggest you accept whatever terms he offers. It may be your best chance at peace." With that, she climbed into her carriage, and the driver flicked the reins. Thomas exhaled slowly. "She is her son-in-law's match." "She is his ally," Marjorie said. "That is not the same." "Will you do as she suggests?" he asked. "Will you leave?" She looked at his house, at the open door, at Mrs. Hargreaves standing inside, arms folded, watching. "No," Marjorie said, "at least not yet." "Then be prepared," Thomas said. "There will be a letter." The letter came the next morning. Mrs. Hargreaves brought it in on a tray, as if it were something to be eaten. "For you," she said. "From the hall." The seal pressed into the wax was unmistakable. Marjorie broke it without ceremony and read, "Marjorie, your conduct last night was, as ever, ill-judged. I had hoped you would show more restraint. The scene you created has given rise to much talk that need not have occurred. For your own sake, and for the sake of those who must now live under the same name you once bore, I urge you to leave Ashford at once. This village is not large enough to accommodate such complicated history. Your health, which has long been delicate, will surely suffer if you remain surrounded by reminders of our unfortunate union. I am willing, out of lingering concern, to provide a modest sum to ease your relocation, on condition that you choose a destination at a suitable distance and refrain from further contact with my household. If you continue in your present course, making yourself an object of speculation, I cannot be responsible for how society chooses to interpret your circumstances or those of the child you carry. Nor can I prevent others from drawing unflattering conclusions regarding your new living arrangements. I trust you will see the prudence in my proposal. Edmund Hargrave. She read it twice, her face calm. Then she held it out to Thomas. He read it, his jaw tightening with each line. He writes as if he is performing a great kindness, Thomas said. That is his way, she replied. He implies you are not in your right mind, Thomas said, that your presence here is improper, that he could allow or not allow what others say of you. He has always believed words belong to him, she said, that he can assign them as he pleases. Mrs. Hargreaves watched them both. What will you do with it? She asked. Marjorie looked at the letter for a long moment. Mrs. Hargreaves, she said, where do you keep the firewood? In the scullery, Mrs. Hargreaves replied, puzzled. Why? I should like to borrow a flame, Marjorie said. Mrs. Hargreaves's expression cleared. Ah, very good, come with me. They went to the small hearth in the kitchen. A few coals still glowed from the morning fire. Mrs. Hargreaves handed Marjorie a taper. Marjorie lit it, then held the bottom of the letter to the flame. The wax seal darkened, then curled. The paper caught, the edges blackening, then turning to pale ash as the fire climbed. Thomas stood at her shoulder. You are sure? He asked. Once gone, you cannot read it again. I do not care to read it again, she said. I have known its contents for months, long before he set them down. This only makes them smell of smoke instead of ink. The last fragment of Edmund's neat script flared and vanished. Mrs. Hargreaves nodded approvingly. That is one way to warm a room. Marjorie watched the ash fall. He wants me gone, she said. That is clear enough. Yes, Thomas said. He wishes to erase you, to tidy the story of his life. He has spent years writing my part for me, she said. Obedient wife, unwell wife, departed wife, now troublesome ex-wife. And what part will you write? Thomas asked. She straightened. If he wishes me gone, she said, then I shall remain. For the first time in my life, I will not obey him. The days that followed the burning of Edmund's letter did not pass quietly. News in Ashford never moved gently. It leapt from mouth to mouth like sparks catching dry straw. By the second morning, Mrs. Hargreaves returned from the market with a look that told Marjorie everything before she spoke a word. You have been promoted, Mrs. Hargreaves said, setting down the basket with more force than necessary. You and the doctor both. Promoted? Marjorie asked. To what? To the chief entertainment of the village, Mrs. Hargreaves replied. Everyone has an opinion, most of them unpleasant. Thomas looked up from the table where he was sorting small packets of herbs. What are they saying? That Miss Collins is more foolish than wicked, which is meant kindly but is not, Mrs. Hargreaves said. That no respectable woman would remain so close to the hall after such a scene. That no respectable doctor would house her. That the child cannot be the Earl's because she has been gone from his house too long. And that leaves one obvious name on everyone's lips. She gave Thomas a pointed look. Mine, he said. Yes, Mrs. Hargreaves answered. Yours. You have suddenly become more fascinating than all your tinctures and powders. Marjorie's hand went to the back of a chair. That is absurd, she said. You have never— Absurdity has never stopped a rumour, Mrs. Hargreaves cut in. And Edmund Hargrave knows that very well, I wager. Thomas's mouth tightened. Have any of our patients spoken to you? Spoken, written, sent third cousins to ask if perhaps the doctor is too occupied with other duties, Mrs. Hargreaves said. Mrs. Fletcher sent word that her husband will consult the apothecary in Oakham instead for a time. Mrs. Bell thinks the churchwarden's cough will improve without your interference, and old Mr. Parsons sent his daughter to say that while you are a very good doctor, he does not wish to die talked about. Thomas let out a slow breath. So, they are withdrawing. For now, Mrs. Hargreaves said. Some will scuttle back when they find the Oakham man charges twice as much and knows half as much, but they will keep their distance until then. This is my doing, Marjorie said quietly. I asked for your help, and now you suffer for it. You asked for a safe room and a doctor's care, Thomas said. Neither of those is a crime. In their eyes it might be worse, she replied. A crime can be counted and punished. This is less visible. They can all pretend their judgments are concern. Mrs. Hargreaves set her hands on her hips. Do not speak as if you have tied him to a post and left him to the weather. He is a grown man. He made his choice. If he did not wish to help you, he could have turned you away on the terrace and pretended not to see you. I would never have done that, Thomas said sharply. Exactly, Mrs. Hargreaves answered. So let us not pretend you were dragged, Doctor. You walked. He conceded with a small nod. Regardless, he said, we must decide how to answer this. We do not answer gossip, Mrs. Hargreaves said. We outlast it. Sometimes, Thomas replied. But this is not idle chatter over bread. Edmund is pressing from the hall. The villagers will follow where he leads if we let him. He may not be satisfied until he has written the story himself. He already has, Marjorie said. Mad wife. Unfaithful wife. Unfit wife. Now corrupting doctor. Thomas gave her a searching look. You still have not told me all of it. She hesitated. All of what? All of what you know about the hall, he said. About the old earl. About why Edmund fears you enough to tear your gown and drive you from the village in every way that does not involve his own hands. She looked at Mrs. Hargreaves. I will fetch more water, Mrs. Hargreaves said promptly. My presence is not required for secrets. You are welcome to stay, Marjorie said. Mrs. Hargreaves shook her head. Secrets sit heavy. Best not to have too many in one kitchen. I shall be in the yard. If anyone comes to the door, I will make them wish they had not. She left them. Thomas leaned his elbows on the table, his hands folded. We have spoken around it. Tell me plainly now. What did Edmund's father say to you? Marjorie sat opposite him. Do you remember the night the old earl worsened, she asked. The one before he died? I do, Thomas said. The London physician had just bled him. And you told him it was not wise, she said. I did, he replied. He ignored me. You left late, she went on. You told Edmund he should sit at his father's bedside. Edmund said he had papers to sign. That sounds like him, Thomas said. After you went, I sat with the earl, Marjorie said. He had always liked me, or so I believed. He said I reminded him of someone. I thought he spoke of his own mother. He was very weak that night. I thought he was half in the past. What did he say? Thomas asked. He called me Miss Collins, she said, not Countess. He asked me if I believed God forgave those who rearranged the world to their liking. I told him I was not qualified to answer for God. He smiled and said that was an honest reply. Then he said, I made Edmund's path smooth, but I did it over someone else's grave, and I have been afraid ever since that the bones would show. Thomas swallowed. Bones. He was not speaking of a real grave, she said. He meant a life, a claim. He spoke of a young woman he had married years before his union with Edmund's mother. A quiet ceremony, far from London, against the advice of his family. There was a child, a son. Then there was some quarrel we never fully understood. They parted. The family said the marriage had been irregular. They hushed it up, called it a mistake, and arranged the match we all know about. But the first union had never truly been dissolved in the eyes of the law. And the son? Thomas asked. The question seemed to echo. The son survived, she said. He was sent away with his mother. There was an allowance, and there were letters. The earl said he had signed papers he did not entirely understand, that he had tried to forget, that his lawyers told him it would all be resolved in time. But near the end he began to doubt them. He said, I built a house on a foundation I never inspected. I fear it may not bear Edmund's weight. Thomas sat back, absorbing this. If that first marriage was lawful, he said slowly, and the son legitimate, then Edmund may not be the rightful heir, Marjorie finished. The title may belong to another, a man who has lived his life, thinking himself a distant relation or nothing at all. And the papers? Thomas asked. You mentioned documents. After the earl died, she said, Edmund locked himself in the study for days. When he finally called me in, he had a document ready. He said it was a statement of my understanding as his wife that he was the only lawful son and heir, that I had never heard anything to the contrary, that I acknowledged no other claim. Thomas's eyes hardened. He wanted you to swear in writing that no such tale had ever reached your ears. Yes, she said. He smiled as he put the paper before me. He said it was a formality, that with my signature, no one could ever raise nonsense about old scandals. And you had heard the old Earl's confession, Thomas said. I had, she replied. So I looked at the paper and something in me refused. I asked if I might see his father's papers. He laughed, then saw I was serious. He told me a wife has no need of such things, but I am stubborn when I choose to be. I persisted. He grew impatient. At last he stalked out, muttering that if looking at old boxes would quiet my nerves, I could amuse myself for an hour. And you did not waste the hour, Thomas said. I did not, she answered. In a drawer at the bottom of an old cabinet, I found a bundle of letters tied with ribbon, and beneath them a certificate, a marriage register entry from a parish in the north, a name I did not know for the bride, a name I knew very well for the groom, and a notation beside it, written later in the margin. Child born, male. So there is proof, Thomas said. There was, she said. I heard Edmund step in the corridor and knew I had little time. I could not take everything. That would have been too obvious. I slipped the certificate and one of the letters into my pocket and left the rest as they were. Later, in my room, I read them. And, he prompted. The letter was from the woman, she said. She wrote of their son, of promises, of a solicitor who had drawn up terms to protect the boy's rights. She begged the Earl not to forget them. The certificate spoke for itself. I realized then that Edmund's paper, the one he wanted me to sign, was not a formality. It was a shield, one he meant to hold up when anyone asked unpleasant questions. And you refused, Thomas said. Yes, she replied. I told him I could not sign something untrue. He called me foolish. He said I did not understand the ways of the world, that such matters were for men to settle, that if I refused, I put our entire household at risk. He spoke of lands, tenants, servants who would suffer if some distant claimant appeared to challenge him. He said I was selfish to throw them into chaos over a story told by a dying man. And you still refused, Thomas said softly. I did, she answered. He grew very cold. He did not shout. He merely said that he would find another way to secure his claim, with or without my help. That day was the beginning of the end between us. From then on, there were more closed doors, more talk of my nerves, more visits from physicians asked to consider whether my mind was robust enough. Thomas's eyes darkened. He meant to have you declared unwell. He considered it, she said. When I left, he let people believe it had been for my health. And the papers, Thomas asked. You said you took them. Where are they now? She was silent for a long time. Marjorie, he said gently. Do you remember the morning I left the hall? She asked instead. It rained. The road was full of ruts. The carriage nearly became stuck before we even reached the gate. I remember the day, he said, though I saw only the carriage from a distance. I knew Edmund would not let me take anything he had not inspected, she said. He would have searched my trunks. He might even have searched my person. The only safe place for those papers was somewhere inside the house, somewhere he would not think to look, somewhere that would wait for me, if I ever had the courage to come back for them. Where? Thomas asked. In the music room, she said, behind the old instrument near the window. There is a panel at the back that comes loose if you press it in the right place. I found it once as a girl when I came to play. I hid them there the day before I left. I thought I might send someone someday to fetch them, or that I would return myself, once all the noise had died down. And now the noise is louder than ever, Thomas said, and the papers are still there. As far as I know, she said, unless someone has cleaned more thoroughly than in the last 20 years. Thomas rose and began to pace the small kitchen. If Edmund knew you had those documents, he would be terrified. He did not know I had taken them, she said. But he suspected I knew more than he liked. That is why he pushed so hard to paint me as unstable. If ever I spoke, he needed people ready to say, "Pay no attention. That is the talk of a troubled mind." And now he spreads tales about the child and about me, Thomas said. If he can persuade the village I am your accomplice, he will have 2 birds with 1 stone. He wishes to leave no one standing who might support my word, Marjorie said. You, especially. You heard the old Earl speak strangely, even if you did not understand the full meaning at the time. That makes you dangerous. Thomas stopped pacing. It also gives us strength, he said. You have seen the papers. I heard the man's own uneasy conscience. Between us, the picture is complete. A picture will not undo a title, she said. Not without proof. We must have the papers, he replied. Only then can anyone be persuaded to look beyond Edmund's smile. The word must hung in the air between them. Marjorie lowered her eyes. To bring them out, she said slowly, would mean casting doubt on an ancient name. It would mean calling down inquiry on all the Hargrave lands, tenants, staff, people who rely on that estate. And what of the man who was perhaps robbed of his birthright? Thomas asked. What of the truth? What of the child you carry, who deserves a world that is not built on lies? She flinched slightly. I do not think of titles for this child, she said. I think only of safety. Then you must think of Edmund's power, Thomas replied. As long as he believes he can shape the story without challenge, he will use it against you. If you show him that the story can be turned upon him, you gain a shield. She looked up at him. You speak of this as if it were a medicine. In a way, it is, he said. A bitter one. But it may be necessary. Mrs. Hargreaves returned, wiping her hands. You both look as if you have swallowed nails, she said. Should I brew something soothing? We are discussing politics, Thomas said. There is nothing soothing in that. Mrs. Hargreaves snorted. Politics in this kitchen? In a manner of speaking, he replied. Mrs. Hargreaves glanced between them. Has it occurred to either of you that Edmund will not stop at gossip? The man likes papers. He likes seals. If talk does not move you, he may reach for something heavier. He has already tried to purchase my departure, Marjorie said. Mrs. Hargreaves shook her head. I mean other kinds of paper. Doctor's notes, magistrate's orders. Men of his sort have more than one way to trap a woman. He could petition to question my mind, Marjorie said quietly, or suggest I am unfit to manage my own decisions. He could, Mrs. Hargreaves said, and if he convinces the right people, he could make your life in this village very small indeed. Thomas's hand clenched around the edge of the table. I will not allow that, he said. If any inquiry is made, I shall speak. I shall say your mind is sound, that you are capable. And who will they believe? Mrs. Hargreaves asked. An earl in a great house or a doctor who lives above his own surgery and keeps a former countess in his spare room? Thomas fell silent. Marjorie's voice when she spoke was calm. Then I must ensure, she said, that if he chooses to reach for such weapons, he finds his own hands already occupied. Thomas looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, she said, that I cannot merely wait here while he arranges my future. If he is busy defending his own name, he will have less strength for attacking mine. You speak in puzzles again, Thomas said. Say it clearly. She met his gaze directly. I must have those papers, she said. The certificate, the letter. I must go back to Ashford Hall and take them from where I left them. Thomas stared at her. No, he said at once. Absolutely not. It is too great a risk. You are with child, Marjorie. That house is not safe for you. The house has never been safe for me, she replied. That did not stop me living there for years. That was before, he said, before we knew how far Edmund would go. If he finds you prowling his rooms now, he will not shrug and call it an accident. I do not intend to prowl, she said. I intend to walk straight in by the door and ask for what remains of my belongings. A woman is permitted to fetch her own things, is she not? While they lead me to trunks and boxes, I will slip into the music room. I know the house better than any of them. It can be done. And if he catches you, Thomas demanded. If he chooses that moment to call in witnesses and declare you confused, intrusive, unwell, then he will do so, she said, with or without that visit. He is already painting me in those colors. At least this way, if he moves against me, I will have something equal in weight to place on the table. Thomas shook his head. I do not like it. Nor do I, she said. But I see no other way. You said yourself we need proof. He paced again, then stopped. I could go, he said. She almost laughed. You? Into Edmund's private rooms. They would drag you out by your collar before you reached the stairs. Perhaps, he conceded, but I cannot sit here while you walk into that place alone. You will not be alone, Mrs. Hargreaves said suddenly. They both turned. I may not be able to march up to the front door, Mrs. Hargreaves went on, but I have ears, and cousins, and a nephew in the hall's kitchen. If you decide to do this mad thing, miss, you will have more than one pair of eyes watching from the road. Thomas pressed his fingers to his temple. You two will drive me to distraction. Someone must, Mrs. Hargreaves said. You are too calm by half. Marjorie rose. I appreciate your concern, she said to both of them. Truly I do, but this is my life, my child, my past. I cannot forever ask others to carry the burden I chose to lift when I refused Edmund's paper. Thomas looked at her, saw the steady set of her jaw, and knew argument would not turn her. If you insist on this, he said quietly, then we will at least plan it properly. You will not simply walk up there tomorrow with no thought. I agree, she said. We will choose our moment. He exhaled. Very well. Then tonight we think, and in the coming days, we act. She moved to the small window, looking out toward the faint line of trees that marked the horizon. Edmund built his peace on the silence of others, she said. His father, his lawyers, his servants, me. He believes that if he tears my dress and scatters my life, I will fold in on myself and disappear. And you will not, Thomas said. She did not turn from the window. No, she said. I shall return to Ashford Hall, not as his obedient wife nor as his shamed guest, but as the woman who will bring his true story into the light. They did not rush into the plan. The decision hung over the house for a full day and a half before anything was done. During that time, Marjorie walked the short passage between the little back room and the kitchen until Mrs. Hargreaves threatened to nail her shoes to the floor. You will wear a path through my boards, Mrs. Hargreaves said. Sit. If you must wear something out, let it be your worries. I cannot sit, Marjorie replied. If I sit, I think. If I think, I begin to see every way this can fail. See at least one way it can succeed, Mrs. Hargreaves said. Take that with you instead. Thomas watched from the table, very still. Tonight, he said finally. Marjorie turned. Are you certain? I am more certain that if we wait any longer, Edmund will think of something else to do, he answered. He will speak to someone at the magistrate's office or to another physician. I would rather be ahead of him for once. Tonight, then, she agreed. Mrs. Hargreaves set down the spoon she had been holding. Then we prepare, she said. You will eat. You will rest for an hour. You will not go into that house trembling from hunger. And you, she added, pointing the spoon at Thomas, will try not to look as if you are marching into a battle you have already lost. I thought I hid it well, Thomas said. You hide nothing from a woman who has washed your shirts for 3 years, she replied. Marjorie let herself be shepherded to a chair. There was broth, bread, and a small apple, sliced into careful wedges. She ate, though each bite felt like an effort. Afterward she lay down as instructed. She did not sleep, but she closed her eyes and tried to imagine walking calmly through the halls of Ashford Hall. The task seemed as far away as London. When she rose, the sky was leaning toward evening. The village sounds softened. Somewhere a dog barked. Somewhere else, laughter drifted faintly. Thomas was waiting by the door, coat on, hat in hand. Are you ready? He asked. No, she said, but I will go anyway. He held the door for her. Mrs. Hargreaves hovered behind them. If you are not back before midnight, Mrs. Hargreaves said, I shall assume you have stopped to scold him properly. If we are not back before midnight, Thomas said, you may send every cousin you possess to shout at the hall gate. Mrs. Hargreaves sniffed. I shall do better than that. I shall go myself. They stepped out into the cooling air. A single carriage waited at the corner, plain but solid. Thomas helped Marjorie in and climbed in after her. You should stay in the house, he said to the driver. Do not loiter at the gate. There is no need to invite questions. The driver touched his hat. Yes, doctor. The road to Ashford Hall was familiar to Marjorie's eyes, yet it seemed narrower now. The hedges leaned in. The trees along the lane were only just budding, their branches dark against the pale sky. Tell me again, Thomas said as the carriage rolled on. Where exactly are the papers? In the music room, she replied. There is a square instrument against the far wall, half decorative, half useful. At the back, near the floor, there is a panel. If you press the left corner, it moves. I slipped the folded papers inside and pulled it back into place. And no one has found it since? He asked. If they had, she said, I would have heard. Edmund would not have kept such a discovery to himself. He nodded, though his jaw remained tight. "You are not at peace with this," she said. "I will be at peace when we are home again, and you are not climbing stairs in a house that wishes you harm," he replied. "The house wishes nothing," she said. "It is only stone and wood." "Then the man in it," he said. She looked at him, at the lines of worry at the corners of his eyes. "You could still stay behind," she said quietly. "Wait for me here. Ask no questions. Let me return with or without success." "I tried to imagine that," he said. "I imagined sitting in that kitchen while you walked into that place alone. It was not a picture I could bear, so I shall not live it." She was silent for a moment. "Thomas," she said, "you will be seen." "Perhaps," he said, "but I'm not sneaking into his drawing room. I shall stay near the stable yard. If anyone asks, I will say I have called to check upon the health of the house, which is in doubtful condition." She huffed a small laugh. "You will not say that?" "I might if sufficiently provoked," he answered. The carriage slowed as they approached the estate. Ashford Hall rose ahead, its windows fewer and less bright than on the night of the wedding. The great lantern at the front door glowed, a yellow eye. They did not drive to the front. Thomas directed the coachman around the side, toward the smaller entrance used by staff and tradesmen. A boy stood near the stable, hands in his pockets, whistling. When he saw them, his face brightened. "Cousin sent me," he said to Marjorie. "Said you might be needing eyes and ears. I am Will Hargreaves. Not like them," he added quickly. "The other sort." "Your aunt is efficient," Thomas said under his breath. "The servants?" Marjorie asked Will. "A few at their suppers," he said. "Lord Edmund's in his study. Lady Beatrice is upstairs with her maid. No one thinking of the music room." "Good," Marjorie said. "Can you tell the maid at the side door that I wish to speak with the housekeeper? She will let me in if she thinks I have come for my things." Will nodded and trotted off. Thomas caught Marjorie's hand as she reached for the carriage door. "Once inside," he said, "do not linger. Go to the room, fetch what you need, and return. Do not let anyone draw you into long conversation." "You sound like Mrs. Hargreaves," she said. "I take that as a compliment," he replied. "If you are not back in half an hour, I shall risk more than the stable yard." "You will not need to," she said. "I have walked those halls in the dark many times." "That is what troubles me," he answered. "You know how easy it is to be lost in them." She squeezed his hand once, then let go and stepped down. The side door opened before she could knock. A maid peered out, eyes wide. "Miss Collins," the maid breathed. We did not know you were—" "I have come for some personal possessions," Marjorie said, not giving the girl time to flounder. "Things left in drawers and trunks. If Mrs. Price would see me, I shall be quick." The maid, grateful for clear instruction, bobbed a curtsy. "Yes, miss. Come in. I shall fetch her." The familiar passage smelled of soap and boiled vegetables. Voices murmured from the servants' hall. Marjorie stood very straight, hands folded, not looking left or right. A moment later, Mrs. Price, the housekeeper, appeared. Her cap was as severe as ever, her face wearing its usual permanent frown. "Miss Collins," she said, with only a tiny hesitation, "this is unexpected." "I will not trouble you long," Marjorie replied. "I have come only to collect a few things I left in my chamber. I did not think it necessary to bother Lord Edmund with the request." Mrs. Price's brows drew closer. "His lordship did not mention you would come." "I did not think he would," Marjorie said. "He has other matters on his mind." "That he does," Mrs. Price said. "Well, the room has not been much disturbed. We have only aired it and changed the linen." "Then I shall be very little trouble," Marjorie said. Mrs. Price looked as if she wished to object, but old habits were strong. Once Marjorie had directed this household. That left traces, even after titles changed. "I will send a girl with you," Mrs. Price said, "to carry boxes." "That will not be necessary," Marjorie said quickly. "I know what I need. It is nothing heavy. I would prefer to disturb as few people as possible." Mrs. Price weighed this, then nodded. "Very well. But do not linger, miss. It is not fitting for you to walk about the house at this hour." "For whom?" Marjorie murmured. Mrs. Price either did not hear or chose not to. Marjorie climbed the back stairs. Her hand slid over the rail in the old way. Each step knew her weight. At the landing, she saw the turn that led to the music room, and forced herself not to glance that way. First, her chamber. If anyone was watching, it would be strange for her to ignore it. The door opened with the same slight protest it always had. The room smelled faintly of lavender, though the bottle on the dressing table was dry. The bed was neatly made, as if waiting for a guest who never arrived. She moved quickly, opening a drawer here, a small chest there, taking out a shawl, a book, a pair of gloves. Let there be something for Mrs. Price to point to if asked. Then, when she could justify an armful, she set the items on the bed and slipped back into the corridor. The music room was down the passage, near the larger staircase. No voices came from that direction. The upper floor was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes a whispered word sound loud. She reached the door. It gave under her hand. The room was as she remembered, 2 chairs by the window, a scattering of music on the stand, the instrument against the wall, half polished and half forgotten. Moonlight from the tall windows lit the floor in pale strips. She crossed to the instrument and knelt carefully, feeling the tug in her side, but ignoring it. Left corner, she whispered to herself. Press. Her fingers found the faint indentation. The panel resisted, then gave way, sliding back with a soft scrape. The folded papers were still there, dry and untouched. Her heart gave a small, sharp leap. She drew them out, glanced quickly to be sure they were the same. The edge of the certificate, the familiar slope of the unknown woman's handwriting. They were unchanged, as if time had paused in that narrow gap. She slipped them into the bodice of her gown, where the fabric lay close against her. "Do not crease," she murmured. "Hold still. Talking to yourself, Marjorie." The voice came from the doorway. She rose too quickly and had to catch her balance. Edmund stood there, one hand on the doorframe. His cravat was loosened, his coat unbuttoned. He looked as if he had been reading in his study and risen for a walk. "Of all places to find you," he said mildly, "I did not think the music room would be the one." "I always liked this room," she replied, forcing herself to breathe evenly. "You know that?" "Yes," he said. "You used to say it was the only room in the house that listened." "It still does," she said. "It heard you earlier when you told Beatrice your first marriage was nothing of consequence." His eyes flicked to the instrument, then back to her. "The staff told me you were here," he said. "I confess I was surprised. I thought you would have taken my letter to heart and gone somewhere more distant." "It burned too quickly for that," she said. "Always dramatic," he murmured. "Tell me, did you come to throw your arms about my neck and beg me to reconsider our separation? Or simply to haunt the corridors with your tragic figure?" "Neither," she said. "I came for my belongings. Mrs. Price knows I am here." "Mrs. Price knows you are in your old chamber," he corrected. "She did not mention the music room. It is an odd place to store gloves." "I had a piece of music I wished to find," she said. "I thought it might still be on the stand." He walked into the room, his steps soft on the rug. "Do not lie to me, Marjorie," he said quietly. "You never were very good at it." "You taught me the necessity of truth," she said. "I taught you the necessity of discretion," he replied. "They are not the same thing." He stopped a few feet away, looking her over. "You are paler than when I last saw you," he said. "Is the good doctor not feeding you properly?" "He feeds me well," she said, "and he does not tear my clothes in public." "Ah, that," Edmund said. "You insist on misreading a simple accident." "It was no accident," she said. He shrugged. "Believe what you like. The effect is the same. Everyone now knows you carry a child. Everyone also knows that you have not been under my roof for some time. You have given them a puzzle. People love puzzles." "They will tire of it," she said. "They always do." "Perhaps," he said, "but not before many have settled on the most entertaining answer. That is how reputations are made and destroyed. One must guide them before they harden into something inconvenient." "Is that what you call what you are doing?" she asked. "Guiding?" "Protecting," he said calmly. "My name, my estate, my new wife, and even you in a way. A woman alone with a child, relying on the goodwill of a village doctor, is exposed. If you go somewhere quiet, somewhere out of the way with a small allowance, you might live a tolerable life. If you stay here, you invite storms you cannot weather." "And you?" she asked. "What storms do you fear?" He smiled, thin and controlled. "I fear nothing," he said. "Liar," she said softly. His eyes sharpened. "Mind your words." "The night your father died, he spoke of a first marriage," she said. "Of a son, of a house built on someone else's ground. You may tell yourself he was confused. You may tell everyone he was wandering in his thoughts, but you heard him. You looked afraid. You were not in the room, he said. I have seen your face 1,000 times, she replied. I know what it looks like when it believes itself unassailable. And I know what it looks like when it sees a crack. He laughed once without humor. So this is your great secret, he said. The fantasy of a dying man who regretted a youthful indiscretion. There was nothing youthful about the papers in that drawer, she said, nor about the lawyer's neat hand affirming the terms of a marriage, nor about the certificate from a parish that does indeed exist. His expression changed at the word papers. It was slight, but she saw it. You speak very confidently, he said, yet you have nothing in your hands. And you have nothing in yours, she said, except fear. He took a step closer. Listen to me, he said. Even if such papers existed, even if some obscure clergyman once scrawled his name on a line beside my father's, it would mean nothing now. The law favors stability. It favors the known heir. It favors the man who has lived as Earl in full view of the world, not a shadow who might be pulled from a hedge in Cumberland. And if that shadow had a rightful claim, she asked, would you sleep easily knowing you slept in his bed? I sleep well, he said coldly, because I understand something you in your moral fervor do not. Titles are not just ink. They are work and expectation. They are the spine of a county. They do not shift every time someone finds a scrap of paper. That is one way to soothe your conscience, she said. Conscience is a luxury, he replied. You had it once. See where it has brought you. It has brought me out of your house, she said. That, at least, is a blessing. He stared at her for a long moment. You have always overestimated the power of truth, he said. You think that if you stand in a room and say this is wrong, the world will stop and listen. It will not. It will look at you, consider how comfortable your words make it, and then choose the version it prefers. And you think you can always offer them the version they prefer, she said. I can offer them the version that keeps their lives smooth, he replied. They prefer that above all. Do you imagine the tenants wish to hear that their rent has gone to the wrong man? That they have sworn loyalty to a mistake? No. They want their fields ploughed and their roofs mended. They will not thank you for tossing doubt into their hearths. Perhaps not, she said, but there may be one man who thanks me. Your hypothetical heir? Edmund gave a short, contemptuous smile. If he even lives. If someone can even find him. If he is not a drunkard or a simpleton, or a man with a dozen bastards of his own. The past is full of such charming figures. Do not flatter yourself that you would be bringing a hero out of the shadows. You might be unleashing something far worse. You are afraid, she said again. You mistake irritation for fear, he replied. I am irritated that you cling to this fantasy. I am irritated that you have placed yourself and your child in the center of a storm you cannot manage. The storm began the day you decided your comfort mattered more than law, she said. He stepped closer still. His voice dropped. Even if you marched into a magistrate's office tomorrow with your little story, he said, what do you suppose would happen? You who left your husband's house under a cloud, who flaunted your condition at his wedding, who now resides under the roof of another man, they will say you are spiteful. They will say you are unwell. And when I present their own physician's letters and the testimony of a dozen respectable people, they will pat you on the head and send you away to be quiet. They will not be the only ones to speak, another voice said. Both turned. Thomas stood in the doorway, hat in hand, face set. Dr. Whitmore, Edmund said with icy politeness, you are far from your surgery. I came to ensure my patient does not collapse on your polished floor, Thomas said. It would distress your servants. You presume much, Edmund said. This is my house, not your clinic. You have no right to wander its corridors. I followed the sound of raised voices, Thomas replied. Raised voices and your name are rarely a healthy combination. Edmund's mouth thinned. You are a bold man for one who lives off the coins of shopkeepers. I live off the trust of people who know I will not lie to them, Thomas said. It is a form of wealth you may not recognize. This is not your affair, Edmund said. You meddle in matters beyond you. I was there when your father died, Thomas replied calmly. I heard him speak of a wrong he feared would outlive him. I heard him speak of a son unseen. I may not have understood all of it then, but I understand enough now to recognize that what Marjorie says is not the product of an unsettled mind. You twist the words of a man in his delirium, Edmund asked. How convenient. I do not twist, Thomas said. I recall, and I am prepared to do so under oath if need be. Edmund's gaze flicked between them. You think the word of a village doctor and a discarded wife will outweigh mine? He asked. You are more foolish than I gave you credit for. You forget something, Marjorie said quietly. We have more than words. He looked at her, eyes narrowing. You have nothing, he said. She reached to the front of her gown and drew out the folded bundle, holding it up. Are you sure? She asked. For the first time he looked genuinely shaken. He took an involuntary step forward, then stopped himself. You would not dare, he said. I would not dare, she repeated. You tore my gown at your wedding. You hinted to the entire county that I am a wanton. You spread whispers about the man who took pity on me. You cast me aside with a few lines on paper. You have dared a great deal, Edmund. It is my turn. Give them to me, he said, holding out his hand. No, she said. His voice hardened. If those are what I think they are, you do not understand their danger. You think you are wielding a sword. You are holding a fire. You will burn more than me. I understand their weight, she said. I have carried it in my mind for months. I have carried it alone no longer. Marjorie, he said, trying a different tone, think of yourself. If this comes out, you will be in the center of it. Every eye will be on you. Every whisper will search for your faults. You are not strong enough for that. Your history is not spotless enough. My history is not spotless because I lived in this house, she said, but I am strong enough. You made me so. And the child? He asked. You claim to care for it. Will you drag it into this? I am dragging it out, she said. Out of your shadow. Out of a story you have twisted to suit yourself. Thomas stepped closer to her side. You asked what we suppose would happen, he said to Edmund. Here is my supposition. We will go to the magistrate in the morning. Marjorie will present what she has found. I will give my account of your father's words. Others may come forward in time. Once they see she is not alone, an inquiry will be opened. The matter of your title will be examined. You may retain it, you may not. But the days when you could sit in this house, certain that no one would ever question you, are over. Edmund drew himself up. You plan to destroy everything, he said. For what? For a principle, for revenge. I plan to tell the truth, Marjorie said. What others do with it is their choice. You made yours. You will regret this, he said. Perhaps, she answered, but I no longer fear your regrets, as I once did. For a moment, the three of them stood there, bound by a knot of memory and resentment and new resolve. Then Edmund turned away. Go, he said. Take your bundle of old paper and your village knight and walk out of my house. If you think you can overturn the world with that, you are welcome to try. But do not come back. There will be no more invitations, no more letters. You are no longer a part of this place. I was never truly part of it, she replied. Only an ornament you chose until it no longer matched the furniture. She moved toward the door. Thomas stayed close, his hand hovering near her elbow without quite touching. At the threshold she paused and looked back once more. Beatrice, she asked, does she know any of this? She knows what she needs to know, Edmund said. No more. That is what your father once believed, Marjorie said. It did not end well for him. She left the music room. The corridor seemed narrower now, as if the house itself resented her passage. They went back the way she had come, through the servants' corridor, down the stairs. In the lower hall, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Beatrice stood there, shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, eyes wide. Marjorie, Beatrice whispered. I heard some of it, not all, enough. Marjorie's heart twisted. I am sorry you heard any of it. Is it true? Beatrice asked. What you said about his father, about another marriage? Yes, Marjorie said. As far as I can know anything. Beatrice looked toward the upper floor, toward the music room. He told me you were unsettled, she said, that you imagined slights, that you could not bear disappointment, that you left of your own will without cause. He would say that, Marjorie replied. It made his story neater. Beatrice's voice shook. He told me you had turned wicked, that you had taken up with this man. She glanced at Thomas. He said you were trying to harm him because you could not forgive him. And what do you think now? Marjorie asked gently. I do not know what to think, Beatrice said, except that When you spoke upstairs, there was no madness in your voice. Only finality. That is what comes when one grows tired of being arranged, Marjorie said. Beatrice swallowed. If there is an inquiry, will my name be in it? Perhaps, Marjorie said. Perhaps not. But your future will be touched by his past, whether anyone writes your name or not. Beatrice looked at Thomas. And you will stand beside her? I will, he said simply. Beatrice nodded slowly. Then whatever happens, she said to Marjorie, I hope you find some kind of peace. I am not sure what I hope for myself. You are young, Marjorie said. You still have time to decide what you will accept and what you will not. Beatrice gave a small, sad smile. That is a frightening gift, she said. It is also the only one worth having, Marjorie replied. Beatrice stepped back. Go, she said, before someone else comes. Mrs. Price is already in a state. They slipped out through the side door. The air outside felt colder, but clearer. Will waited near the stable, pretending to inspect a horse's hoof. Well, he whispered. Well enough, Thomas said. Go home and tell your aunt that gossip will be thick tomorrow. Will grinned, then sobered at the look on Marjorie's face. Are you all right, miss? He asked. I am still standing, she said. That is something. The carriage was where they had left it. Thomas helped her in, then joined her. As they began to move, the first true tremor of the night went through her. It is done, she said. I have the papers. He has seen that I have them. There is no going back. No, Thomas agreed. There is only forward. She took a breath, another, feeling the tight knot in her chest loosen and tighten again. Thomas, she said suddenly. Yes? Do you truly understand what you are stepping into? She asked. You could step back even now. Let me go to the magistrate alone. You could say you were only my doctor, nothing more. Is that what you wish? He asked quietly. She looked at him, at his tired, steady eyes. No, she said. It is not what I wish, but I cannot ask you to tie your name to mine in this. You did not ask, he said. I chose. Why? She whispered. He was silent for a moment. Because I love you, he said simply. I have loved you far longer than I should. Longer than is wise. I loved you when you were a girl who laughed at my ink-stained fingers. I loved you when you married Edmund and rode past my house with your veil fluttering. I loved you when I watched you grow thinner and quieter under his roof, and I love you now when you sit before me with old paper in your dress and a child beneath your hand, and more courage than any man in that hall. Her eyes stung. You never said. What right had I to say? He asked. You were a countess. I was a doctor with a few rooms and a bag. I told myself it was enough to care for you as a friend, to be the one person who spoke plainly to you when others needed something from you. Then you left him, and I still said nothing because you were hurt and I would not add my feelings to your burdens. And now, she asked, now we are driving away from the house where you were broken and bound and toward a day when you will stand in a room and tell the truth, he said. I cannot pretend in such a moment that my heart is not tangled in what happens to you. You deserve to know. She let out a shaky breath. I do not know what to say. You need not say anything now, he replied. Tomorrow is heavy enough. I will ask you only this. When all this is over, when Edmund has been forced to face what he has built, when you are free of his claims, will you allow me to ask you again, properly in daylight, without the shadow of his house on us? She looked down at her hands, then at the darkness beyond the window. Yes, she said softly. When it is over, you may ask, and I will answer you without fear. He closed his eyes for a moment as if steadying himself, then opened them again. Then that is enough for tonight, he said. The carriage rolled on, away from Ashford Hall, toward the small house with the narrow bed and the kitchen that smelled of herbs and bread. Marjorie leaned back against the seat, the papers warm against her, the child shifting faintly within, and for the first time in a long while, the road ahead did not seem like an unknown void, but a path she had chosen herself, with someone beside her who had chosen it too. The next morning dawned pale and clear, as if the sky itself did not yet know what it meant to be bold. Marjorie stood in Thomas's small front room, fastening the last button on her gown. The child rested heavily but calmly inside her. Every movement reminded her that this day was not just for the past, but for the future that kicked against her ribs. Mrs. Hargreaves adjusted Marjorie's shawl with brisk hands. "You will not catch a chill," Mrs. Hargreaves said. "I will not have you sneezing while you are bringing down an earl." "Perhaps the earl will be the one who sneezes," Marjorie replied. "That would be a mercy," Mrs. Hargreaves said. "Better sneezing than shouting." Thomas appeared in the doorway, coat brushed, jaw clean-shaven, eyes serious. "The magistrate's clerk has arrived," he said. "He waits at the inn. The magistrate will hear us there rather than in the village hall to avoid too much audience." "How thoughtful," Marjorie said. "He spares us the crowd, but not the questioning." "He is not Edmund," Thomas replied. "He is a man with a ledger, not a man with a stage. That is in our favor." Mrs. Hargreaves put her hands on Marjorie's shoulders. "Remember," she said, "you are not going there to beg. You are going to tell what you know, that is all." Marjorie nodded. "I can do that." Thomas offered his arm. She took it. Outside, a small carriage waited again. No crest, no flourishes, just wheels and wood. They rode in silence at first. The village watched them go with cautious eyes. A few people nodded. A few looked away. None called out. "You are very quiet," Thomas said softly. "I am thinking how strange it is," Marjorie replied. "For years I walked on eggshells around men with titles. Now I'm on my way to tell one of them he may be standing on someone else's floor. Does that frighten you?" he asked. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not as much as it used to. Fear looks different now. It is no longer a wall, it is a door. And you are opening it," he said. She gave a short laugh. "With shaking hands." "They are still hands," he said. "That is what matters." The inn was modest and clean, its sign swinging gently in the breeze. Inside, a private parlour had been cleared. The magistrate sat at a table, something like annoyance and curiosity mixed on his face. A clerk with ink-stained fingers waited with a quill. To one side stood Lady Everley, composed but paler than usual. Beatrice sat beside her, gloved hands folded tightly in her lap. Edmund was near the window, looking out as if the view might rescue him. As Marjorie entered, all eyes turned. "Miss Collins," the magistrate said, rising. "Dr. Whitmore, thank you for coming. The matter you raised in your letter is not a light one." "I did not write it lightly," Marjorie said. "I should hope not," the magistrate replied. "Accusations regarding noble titles must be handled with order. We are not in a tavern." "I am very aware of that," she said. Edmund had turned now. His gaze slid over her, down to the curve of her body, then to the small bulge of papers under her arm. "So," he said, "you have dressed your tale for a larger audience." "I have brought it to the proper room," she replied. The magistrate cleared his throat. "Lord Ashford," he said, "let us be clear. No one here today issues formal accusations. We are here to determine whether there is sufficient cause to open an official inquiry. Nothing more." "I understand," Edmund said calmly. "I am grateful for the opportunity to address any confusion at once." Lady Everley's eyes flicked to him. Her expression gave nothing away. The magistrate gestured to chairs. "Please sit," he said. "We will proceed in an orderly fashion. Miss Collins, as you are the origin of this matter, we will begin with you. Dr. Whitmore, you will speak after her." Marjorie sat, her back straight. Thomas took the chair beside her. Edmund, Lady Everley, and Beatrice remained along the wall. The clerk dipped his pen. "Miss Collins," the magistrate said, "in your letter you suggested that the legitimacy of Lord Ashford's title may be in question, based on documents and a deathbed conversation with the previous Earl. Do you stand by this suggestion?" "Yes," Marjorie said. "Very well," he replied. "Tell me, in your own words, what you know." She spoke without embroidery. She told of the old Earl's restless last night, of the way he had called her Miss Collins as if reaching backward, of his talk of an earlier marriage he had never fully undone. She described his fear that his house rested on a lie, his mention of a son born to that first union. Then she told of the document Edmund had placed before her, asking for her written assurance that no such story had ever passed her ears, and her refusal to sign it. "You refused?" the magistrate asked. "Yes," she said. "I could not sign my name to something that was not true." Edmund let out a quiet breath as if bored. "Many people speak strangely near death," he said. "My father included. He was never clear in his thoughts those last days." The magistrate held up a hand. You will have your turn, sir. He turned back to Marjorie. You mentioned documents, he said. What documents? Marjorie laid the folded bundle on the table. Her fingers shook slightly as she opened it. This, she said, is a copy of a marriage entry from a parish in the north, bearing the name of Edmund's father and another woman, dated before his union with the present Countess Dowager. And this is a letter from that woman to the late Earl, referencing their son and the terms drawn up to secure the boy's rights. The magistrate's expression changed as he read. His eyes moved quickly over the lines, then more slowly. He passed the paper to the clerk, who squinted and began to copy names onto his own sheet. These are serious documents, the magistrate said at last. Have they been examined by any other legal mind? No, Marjorie said. Until now they were hidden. I found them in a drawer, took them and hid them in the house. I recovered them last night. No one else has touched them since the day I left the hall. Why did you not bring them forward sooner? He asked. For a time I did not know how, she said. I was the countess, dependent on the very title these papers might disturb. Then I was the discarded wife, already whispered about. My word held little value. I feared I would be called mad or malicious. I still fear it. But I now carry a child who will grow up in the shadow of the Hargrave name, whether I wish it or not. I cannot accept that shadow if it is cast by a lie. Beatrice's hands tightened in her lap. Lady Everleigh's jaw clenched. The magistrate turned to Thomas. Dr. Whitmore, he said, you wrote that you witnessed the late Earl speak of a wrong connected to his son. Tell me what you heard. Thomas spoke calmly, his voice even. He described being summoned to the hall, the London physician's impatience, the late Earl's unease. He repeated phrases the dying man had used, about rearranging the world, about fear of discovery, about a son unseen. He did not embellish. I am not a lawyer, Thomas said. I cannot swear what those words mean in law. I can only say they troubled me, and that when Miss Collins later told me what she had found, those words and these papers seemed of a piece. The magistrate considered this. You understand, doctor, he said, that the dying often speak in tangled ways. I do, Thomas said. I sit at many bedsides. I also know the difference between a mind broken by fever and a mind weighed down by regret. The late Earl's mind was not clear, but his conscience was loud. Edmund gave a small, incredulous laugh. You make poetry out of a man mumbling in his sleep, he said. Is this truly what we are doing, hanging an ancient title on the babble of illness? We are not hanging it on anything yet, the magistrate replied. We are deciding whether it merits scrutiny. Lord Ashford, you may speak now. Edmund stepped forward, all courtesy. Sir, he said, my father was a man of the world before he married my mother. I do not deny that in his youth he may have made choices he later regretted. Many young men do. If he once made some clandestine arrangement with a woman, and if some overzealous clergyman put his name in a book, that does not make a lawful marriage. My father always maintained that no such union was valid. His lawfully wedded wife was the Countess Dowager. I am the son of that marriage. Every court, every peer, every landholder has recognized me as such since I came of age. And the letter? The magistrate asked, tapping the folded page. The one that speaks of a son and legal terms? Forged letters are not unheard of, Edmund said. People will do much for money. A desperate woman could easily have penned that, hoping to extract more from a man who had already given her too much. He glanced at Marjorie. My former wife has always had a taste for dramatic tales. I cannot say where she found these documents. I can only say that they do not alter the fact that I have lived openly as Earl of Ashford for years, without challenge. That stability must count for something. The magistrate steepled his fingers. Stability does matter, he said slowly. So does the law. If there was a lawful prior marriage and a legitimate male heir, the matter becomes complicated. The law is not meant to throw counties into chaos over ancient indiscretions, Edmund said. Surely you know that? The law is meant to uphold legitimacy, the magistrate replied, at least in principle. In practice, we must decide whether the questions raised here are serious enough to warrant examination. That is my present task. Lady Everleigh spoke for the first time. If I may, she said. The magistrate inclined his head. Lady Everleigh, my daughter's future is tied to Lord Ashford's, Lady Everleigh said. Or it has been until now. I cannot pretend I am unconcerned with the outcome of this discussion, but I am more concerned with the manner in which we arrive at it. I have heard Miss Collins speak today. I have known women whose minds are truly unwell. She is not one of them. Beatrice looked at Marjorie, her eyes clear and anxious. I heard them in the house last night, Beatrice added softly. I heard Marjorie and Edmund speak of this. She did not sound like someone inventing stories. She sounded like someone tired of hiding. Edmund turned to her. Beatrice, you do not understand all the implications. No, she said, I do not. But I understand what it is to be told only what you need to know. I have been told that often enough. Lady Everley drew a breath. Magistrate, she said, I believe this matter must be examined properly, for my daughter's sake, for Lord Ashford's, and for the sake of the name itself. I will not have Beatrice stepping into a house that trembles with unanswered questions. Edmund looked at her, truly startled. You would have them drag my father's name through mud? He demanded. I would have them look at the ground beneath your feet, she said. If it is firm, then you may walk without fear. If it is not, better to know now than when my grandchildren are in the nursery. Silence followed her words. The magistrate nodded once. Very well, he said. I have heard enough for this stage. Miss Collins has presented documents that appear authentic at first glance. Dr. Whitmore has given supporting testimony regarding the late Earl's state of mind. Lord Ashford has offered explanation, but not refutation. Lady Everley has requested clarity. In light of all this, I have no choice but to open a formal inquiry into the legitimacy of the present title. Edmund's hand clenched briefly at his side. What does that mean precisely? He asked. It means, the magistrate said, that I will send copies of these documents to the appropriate legal authorities. The parish where this first marriage was recorded will be contacted. The lawyers named in this letter will be traced, or their successors. We will seek evidence of the supposed first marriage and of any living heir. Until then, you retain your title in practice, but it is now under question. So I am to live under a cloud because my former wife enjoys rearranging the past, Edmund said. You are to live as you have, with the addition of doubt, the magistrate replied. Doubt you chose when you ignored what your father told you. This is not Miss Collins's doing alone. He gathered the papers. In the meantime, he said, no one here is to speak of this matter as if it were decided. It is not. We seek truth, not immediate scandal. Do you all understand? They murmured assent. Even Edmund. The magistrate's gaze softened slightly as it rested on Marjorie. You have done a difficult thing today, he said. Whether it proves to have legal force or not, it took courage. It took desperation, Marjorie said quietly. Courage only arrived because there was nowhere left to go. Sometimes that is how it comes, he replied. The gathering dissolved slowly. Lady Everley spoke low to her daughter, her hand resting on Beatrice's arm. Edmund left without looking back at Marjorie, his shoulders straighter than his eyes. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter exactly, but open. Thomas walked beside Marjorie in silence for a few steps. Well, he said. It is done. Yes, she said. I thought the world might crack when I laid those papers down. It has not. The world rarely cracks for our convenience, he said. It shifts instead, she exhaled. Do you regret it? He asked. No, she said. Do you? No, he replied. Though I expect to be called impudent by more than one person before the week ends. A voice called her name. Miss Collins! Beatrice hurried toward them, skirts swishing, bonnet ribbons trembling. Marjorie turned. Lady Beatrice. Beatrice stopped, catching her breath. I wanted to speak to you before you went, she said. I may not have another chance soon. You may have as many as you like, Marjorie said, unless your mother bans my name from your house entirely. My mother, Beatrice said, has just informed Edmund that our engagement is suspended. That is the polite word. She says it is until the inquiry finishes. I am not sure the word she uses in private. I see, Marjorie said. Beatrice swallowed. I do not know yet what I hope the inquiry will find. A clear answer, that is all. But I know this. I cannot marry a man whose life is stitched together with half-truths. Whatever happens, I needed to tell you that I see you differently now than I did at the wedding. Differently how? Marjorie asked. As someone who survived, Beatrice said. I do not know if I will have your courage. I hope I will never need it. But if I do, I will remember you burned his letter. Marjorie felt something ease in her chest. Do not fashion your life according to mine, she said gently. Fashion it according to what you can bear when you look in a mirror. Beatrice smiled a little. You always speak as if you are scolding and comforting at the same time. It is a habit, Marjorie said. Beatrice looked at Thomas. You will marry her, she said, not as a question. Thomas flushed lightly. If she will have me. She will, Beatrice said. Anyone with eyes can see that. She looked back at Marjorie. When that day comes, I hope you will let me send flowers. It is a small thing, but I would like to. I would like that, Marjorie said. Beatrice nodded, then turned and walked back toward her mother, shoulders straighter than when she had entered the inn. Thomas watched her go. She will be all right, he said. Yes, Marjorie replied. She is learning to ask herself what she wants. That is the beginning of everything. Days turned into weeks. The inquiry moved slowly, like a deep river far away, always running, rarely seen. Letters came from distant places, one from the northern parish, confirming the entry, another from a firm of solicitors, acknowledging that their predecessor had indeed handled certain private arrangements for the late Earl. No one declared Edmund stripped of his title overnight. That would have been too simple. But the shape of the truth grew sharper. In Ashford Village, people adjusted. Mrs. Fletcher returned to Thomas's surgery one afternoon, eyes downcast. Doctor, she said, my husband's cough has grown worse. The man in Oakham gave him something that did nothing but empty our pockets. If you could find it in your heart to, we would be grateful. Thomas treated the cough without remark. When Mrs. Fletcher left, she squeezed Marjorie's hand at the door. I spoke harshly before, Mrs. Fletcher murmured. When I saw you in the street, I let other people's words fill my mouth. I am sorry. Apologies are not required, Marjorie said, but they are welcome. Others came as well. Old Mr. Parsons grumbled that he had known all along that Whitmore was the only man who could set his bones. The vicar's wife, Mrs. Latham, called with a basket of bread and a complicated speech about trials being mysterious blessings. I do not pretend I understand all you have done, Mrs. Latham said, but I cannot deny that you walked into the lion's den with your head held high. That is instructive. You flatter my posture, Marjorie said. In time, the sharpest edge of gossip dulled. The villagers had other matters to worry over. Late frosts, early lambs, the price of coal. Marjorie became part of the street's tapestry, no longer its loudest thread. Her belly grew. The child kicked with more insistence. One evening, as she sat by the small fire, Thomas watched the movement beneath her gown with open wonder. Does it hurt? He asked. It feels like being nudged from within by a small, determined elbow, she said. It is not pain. It is insistence. Like its mother, he said. Like its doctor, she replied. Mrs. Hargreaves, darning socks in the corner, sniffed. With two such stubborn people to answer to, I pity the babe. Do you? Marjorie asked. Or do you envy it? Mrs. Hargreaves's needle stilled for a moment. Perhaps a little, she said. A few days later, Thomas came in from the surgery with an odd look on his face. What is it? Marjorie asked. Has someone arrived with 3 broken limbs and a new rumour? Neither, he said. It is the magistrate's clerk. He brought a letter. For you. He held it out. The seal was plain. No crest. Marjorie opened it. The lines were terse but clear. The inquiry, the letter said, had confirmed the existence of a lawful prior marriage and a legitimate male heir, born before Edmund. The heir had not yet been located, but the facts could not be erased. Edmund would retain control of the estate provisionally, but his position as rightful earl was now formally under review. The matter would move to higher courts. It might take years, but the cloud was no longer a whisper. It was written in ink. At the bottom, a note. Whatever the final legal judgment, your courage in bringing this to light is acknowledged. Well, Thomas said softly. There it is. Marjorie read the lines twice, then folded the paper. He will hate this, she said. Yes, Thomas said. But he will have to live with it. And me? She asked. You, he said, are free. She looked at him, startled. Free of what? She asked. Free of any obligation to keep his secrets, he said. Free of his name's spell. Free to choose the rest of your life without wondering if you have betrayed some duty to a house built on hidden bones. She laughed through a sudden thickness in her throat. That is a very poetic way of saying I may breathe more easily, she said. Yes, he replied. You may breathe. She did. Deeply. The baby chose that moment to kick. She pressed her hand to the movement. I would like to do more than breathe, she said. What would you like to do, he asked. She looked at him steadily. You asked me once, she said, if, when all this was over, you might ask me properly. I believe we have reached the farthest edge of over that we will see in some time. He went very still. Are you telling me, he said slowly, that I may now be improper if I delay? I am telling you, she said, that if you have a question, you should ask it before I grow impatient and ask it of you myself. Mrs. Hargreaves, who had just entered with a basket of laundry, froze in the doorway. Oh, she said, I will just take these to the other room. No, Marjorie said. Stay, if you like. You have earned a front row seat. Thomas stood. His hands trembled slightly. He crossed the room and stopped in front of her chair. Marjorie Collins, he said, voice low but clear, will you marry me? Not as a refuge, not as a bargain, but as yourself, with your sharp words and your stubborn heart and your child, who I will gladly claim and cherish as my own. Will you sit at my table and walk beside me on my rounds and tell me when I am being foolish until we are old and my hands shake too much to hold a scalpel? Tears blurred her vision. She laughed, half sob. That is a very crowded question, she said. I can simplify it, he replied. Will you be my wife? Yes, she said. Yes, Thomas, I will. He let out a breath that sounded like years. Mrs. Hargreaves clapped once, sharply. About time, she said. I was beginning to think I would have to marry you both myself to get it done. They married quietly 2 weeks later in the village church. The vicar spoke the familiar words. Marjorie wore a simple gown that did not pretend to hide her condition. Thomas stood beside her, his hand solid in hers. Mrs. Hargreaves sniffed loudly into a handkerchief. Will Hargreaves grinned so much his face hurt. At the end of the service, as they stepped out into the churchyard, Marjorie saw a small cart drawn up by the gate. A spray of fresh flowers rested on its seat, with a note. For Mrs. Whitmore, it read in a neat, young hand, with wishes for courage that no one will try to harness again. There was no signature, but Marjorie did not need one. She held the flowers, breathing in their light scent. She kept her promise, she said. Who? Thomas asked. A girl who has begun to decide what she will accept, Marjorie replied. Life settled into a new shape. Marjorie became Mrs. Whitmore without feeling smaller. The name sat lightly on her. The cottage expanded in ways that had nothing to do with walls. The back room where Marjorie had first slept became a nursery, with a crib Thomas and Will built with more enthusiasm than skill. Mrs. Hargreaves tutted over the uneven joints, then lined the crib with soft blankets and hummed old tunes as she smoothed them. The child arrived on a summer afternoon when the air was warm and the world outside buzzed. The labor was long, but not dangerous. Thomas, for once, was not the calmest person in the room. He hovered until Mrs. Hargreaves pushed him out for a moment and told him to breathe into a cloth if he must, but not over his wife. When the baby finally cried, the sound cut through everything. A girl, Mrs. Hargreaves announced, placing the tiny, wriggling bundle into Marjorie's arms. Quick and loud. She will fit in. Thomas looked as if someone had placed the sun in his hands when he took the child for the first time. She is perfect, he said, awed. Look at her hands. They are so small. They will grow, Marjorie murmured. They will grasp more than we can imagine. What will you call her? Mrs. Hargreaves asked. Marjorie and Thomas exchanged a look. Grace, Marjorie said, for what we did not expect and did not earn, and perhaps Elizabeth, for my mother. But mostly Grace. Grace Whitmore, Thomas repeated, tasting the name. Yes, that suits her. He sat beside Marjorie on the bed, the baby between them, their shoulders touching. Do you think, Marjorie asked softly, that one day she will hear all of this? The hall, the papers, the inquiry. Yes, Thomas said, but not as a burden, as a story. One that tells her that when something is wrong, even if everyone profits from it, she is allowed to say so. And if she asks why we did it, Marjorie said, what will we say? He thought for a moment. We will say, he answered, that we wanted her to grow up in a world where her mother did not bow to a lie, where love was chosen, not given as a consolation prize for obedience. Where a man's worth was in how he stood beside her, not in what title he signed. She smiled. "That is a better story than we were bored," she said. Mrs. Hargreaves wiped at her eyes again. "I'm going to make tea," she muttered, "or I shall embarrass myself." Time moved again. News drifted in like distant weather. A letter arrived months later, saying that a man had been found in the north, a quiet middle-aged fellow with a modest living and a puzzled expression, who appeared to be the rightful son of the late Earl's first marriage. The legal wheels would turn for years. There would be negotiations, compensations, adjustments. Edmund would not be cast into the road, but neither would he sit as securely in his chair as before. When the letter came, Marjorie read it, then set it aside. "Do you feel vindicated?" Thomas asked. "I feel finished," she said. "The rest is for them to balance. I have my own house to see to." Their own house needed plenty. Patients came and went, laughing, complaining, paying in coins or eggs. Children tugged at Marjorie's skirts in the street. Grace learned to sit up, then to crawl, then to stand at the edge of the kitchen table and bang a spoon with fierce confidence. One evening, not long after Grace's first steps, Marjorie and Thomas walked together up the little hill beyond the village. Grace dozed against Marjorie's shoulder, her curls warm against her neck. From the top, they could see Ashford Hall in the distance, its silhouette softened by the fading light. "Do you ever miss it?" Thomas asked quietly. "The hall?" she said. "The rooms, the bells, the way every footstep echoed?" "Yes," he said. "Any of it." She considered. "I miss playing in the music room when I believed music was all it held," she said. "I miss the view from the east window on cold mornings. I miss the girl who walked in there thinking life would be as simple as a vow and a dance." "And the rest?" he asked. "The rest I do not miss," she replied. "I do not miss weighing every word. I do not miss lying awake, wondering which part of myself I had misplaced that day to keep the peace. I do not miss being proud of a name that did not belong to truth." He slipped his arm around her. "And what do you have now?" he asked. She looked at him, at the sleeping child, at the village below with its uneven roofs. "I have this hill," she said. "This stubborn doctor. This child who will grow up knowing that my silence was broken. I have a home where my voice is heard even when I am wrong. I have a life I chose, not one I merely stepped into because it glittered." He kissed the top of her head, gentle and sure. "And I," he said, "have a wife who walked through fire and came out with papers, a baby, and a laugh still intact. I think I bargained very well." She smiled against his shoulder. "You did not bargain," she said. "You waited. You listened. You told me the truth when I did not wish to hear it. That is a richer price than any dowry." They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the light fade. At last, Marjorie spoke again. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that anyone in that hall feels envy when they look this way?" "Of us?" he said, surprised. "Of anyone," she said. "Of a life that is small, but honest." "Perhaps," he said. "Perhaps not. But it does not matter." "Why not?" she asked. "Because envy and admiration are their concern," he replied. "Ours is to live in such a way that when Grace asks us one day, 'Did you do what you believed was right even when it cost you?' we can answer yes without looking away." She looked down at her sleeping daughter. "Then we will do that," she said. They turned back toward the village, walking slowly, careful of the path in the dimming light. Behind them, Ashford Hall stood as it always had, its stones bearing the weight of new names and old decisions. Before them, the narrow streets of Ashford village glowed with lamplight, windows bright, doors open to the night air. Marjorie tightened her hold on Grace and slipped her hand into Thomas's. In a world that counted worth in titles and whispered judgments, they walked home with empty pockets and full hearts, certain of only one thing, that truth, once spoken, could not be pushed back into silence, and that love chosen in freedom was a richer inheritance than any ancient name. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories, full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.